Today, we're talking about the curse of being an adult Lego fan. I want to start off by having you do a thought experiment. What I'm going to ask you to do is to think about the set or sets or even the themes that first got you into Lego, ideally when you were a kid. Of course, if you got into Lego as an adult, that's okay. Think of those sets and themes, and I'm going to tell you mine. So go ahead if you want to pause the video as you think of them, because I want you to hold on to those for a little bit in time. So go ahead and pause. All right, so for me, there were three themes that really got me into Lego as a kid that just blew up my imagination, right? The first one was what was called Town. It was the precursor to City. And in particular, there were a few sets that captured my imagination. The first one was this police station that came out in the 1980s, and it was a set that I built and took apart and built again so many times. I had it memorized. I could build it without having to look at the instructions, and I could build it while I was watching the Browns lose a football game or whatever it was that I wanted to do. And I loved seeing the police motorcycles. The garage door was such a fun thing to move up and down, even though building the helicopter, finding some of those pieces was always a pain in our collection. The second set that always jumped out to me was the motorcycle shop that was released in the, again, 1980s. You're going to catch a theme here when it comes to the time frame. This was my first ever building set, of an actual structure that I remember. In fact, I remember going to my grandparents' house, sitting at their kitchen table, and my grandma saying, "Oh, I think you might be a little too young for that." And I'm like, "It's okay, Grandma. It's okay. I got this," right? And I was able to build it, and she was so impressed, and that made me feel really excited about my life and where I was going. And then the third set I remember jumping out to me was a set called the Big Rig Truck Stop. This one I got when I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. I was sick. I had pneumonia. I think my dad felt bad for me, and he was just so concerned that he bought me this set, and I wanted to build it right away. And he was like, "No, you need to rest, and I can lift it with one hand." And it was just kind of bizarre, but I loved that set because the trucks were so realistic for the time, and it was built on the base plates, like the road base plates. It came with a T-junction plate, and you could fold it up with the hinges. It had the diner, it had the offices. It was so essential to any town that we were building that if we'd taken our sets apart, we knew we had to build that one pretty quickly. And those sets really inspired me to think, what would it be like if we had a big, massive town and we were able to get some road plates and put our sets together or build our own custom things, use the Lego idea books from back in the day and try to come up with something like that. Another theme that really got me going was pirates. I loved those pirate themes. 1989 and the early 1990s, and the Black Seas Barracuda was like the set, right? That was the one that every kid wanted. And I remember my older brother and I, we share a birthday. He's 2 years older than me. And one year my parents were like, "Yeah, we're going to go to Toys R Us. You can pick any Lego set that you want." And we were like, "Any set?" Like, once we got there, we ran to the Black Seas Barracuda. We each got one, and it remains to this day one of my favorite sets of all time. And I just loved building all these pirate forts and ships, but I always would have that Black Seas Barracuda sailing the open seas, attacking the soldiers. And I even liked the soldiers more than the pirates, but that ship was awesome. And then the third theme was, if you're watching this video and you're a fan of our channel, Castle, right? It was not a surprise to anybody, but there were sets that I had when I was young that were Castle that just blew my mind and got me thinking about what it was like to live in the medieval times and what it'd be like to have cool big castles. And so one of them was the Black Falcon's Fortress, because it had those really nice towers with the corner panel pieces. It came with that awesome Black Falcon's flag that is a rare piece that I'm so glad I have in my collection. And another one was the Black Monarch's Castle that I remember saving up my money for such a long time to be able to go to the toy store and get that one. In fact, my older brother was saving up for the exact same set, and he beat me to the saving total by about like a week. And I remember begging my parents, like, "Hey, can we just get it at the same time and I'll pay you back? It's only a couple dollars." And they're like, "No, like, we'll take you back up to the toy store." And it was like a 35 to 40 minute drive one way. It wasn't a short trip, but we'll take you there. when you get your money. And I remember buying that set and driving home, and I'm in the back seat of our family sedan, and I would have the box. And remember, you could lift up the flaps and you could see the insert and the tray, and you could look at the back of the box and see all the alternate builds. Like, it was so exciting to get that set. And what we did with the Lego was we would imagine what it was like to just have the bigger, better versions and to have all those sets and combine them and build our own stuff. What if you had unlimited bricks? What if you had just this massive pile of gray bricks and window panels and you could build a huge castle? What would it be like? And if you grew up in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s, you were probably in a situation like that, to the point that as you became an adult, you were able to then buy a bunch of Lego sets, and you might be able to buy multiple copies of a Creator 3-in-1 house and build a mansion or a number of homes, or you could build a big castle by buying multiple copies, or you could go to the new bricklink.com and buy your pieces and build that castle of your dreams. And Lego started taking notice, right? Lego was like, hey, these adults want to buy Lego. Let's start making sets that appeal to them. And we've talked about this on the channel before, how in the mid 2000s, they started coming out with 18 plus sets, or sets that were geared more toward the adults, like the VW Beetle, the original Eiffel Tower, and yes, the Cafe Corner in 2007. And from then on, we have seen an increase in the number and quantity and quality and the themes that are getting these 18 plus sets. And it gets to the point where we start to see the curse of being an adult Lego fan. What is that curse? Well, I think the curse is this. Our childhood imagination was conquered by reality, right? Our childhood imagination of having these huge cities in our mind, which are probably the size of this table, or castles or pirate displays made out of the pieces that we had. That was the dream. And now we have that dream. Now we have all of these 18 plus sets. I've got a set right off camera that you can't see, the Pac-Man that we bought during Insider's Days that I haven't gotten around to build. That would have never happened when I was a kid, because we got the set and we were going to start building it immediately. And yeah, it might take a couple days after school of building it to complete it, but it wouldn't go unbuilt for very long. That was the dream, and we had that imagination. And now, as adults, we have that capability. And if you don't have the money, you can watch somebody else do it on YouTube or social media. You can see the massive cities, the castle collabs. You can go to conventions and see how people work together to build just an absolutely massive medieval diorama full of castles and skeletons and knights and fights and trees and forestmen and all the things that you remind you as a kid of what it was like having those dreams. And it's been conquered by reality. And what are the implications of that, right? I mean, if I think about what it's like now as an adult fan compared to what it was like as a kid, yeah, I don't have the same imagination as a 43-year-old adult as I did when I was 10, 12, 13 years old. But at the same time, I've seen so many things that people do that it's incredible with Lego. And I don't have to imagine what it's like anymore. And likewise, I don't have to imagine what it's like for Lego to come out with a huge castle, like the Lion Knight's castle. Or what would it be like if Lego had a Minas Tirith? Well, it's right there, right? We know what it's like because Lego's done it. And they've increasingly given us niche sets so that no matter what you're into, you can get an 18 plus style display set for your collection. And the implications, I think, for me at least, are that, number one, I sometimes really struggle to like or to be impressed by small sets. I see small sets and I think, okay, that's nice. I don't particularly like it. And part of it is not appreciating the building techniques and the parts usage that somebody has when you have a much narrower budget and parts that you can use to get something to look a certain way and being able to accomplish it. Another thing is I don't have any interest in buying some of those smaller sets. Not because they're not well done. They could be very well done. I just think bigger is better. And yeah, we buy smaller sets and we review them, and I enjoy some of those, but by and large, we're all thinking about those big sets to the point where I believe that we see the big sets and we say, wow, Lego is so expensive, I can't afford it, while we ignore that there are really good sets at the lower end. And by the way, yes, Lego is expensive. It continues to get more expensive, and that is in and of itself an issue that is a topic for a separate video. I'll give you a couple of examples of my own life, and I want you to think about this as I go through this. I remember the original Lost Tomb Indiana Jones set that came out in 2008. I thought it was great. I was an adult. I was newly back into Lego for a couple of years. The number of adult-styled sets weren't all that numerous. Lego only released a couple every single few months. And that set I thought was incredible. It was a $20 set. It was affordable. It had these nice pillars that would, or the things that would collapse on Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood. You had the Ark built there. You had the hieroglyphics in there. It was just such a cool set, and I really thought it was incredible. Now, would I get that set? I don't know. Think back. I'm going to ask you to think of those sets and hold on to them. Think back to the sets that really got you into Lego. And if Lego released those exact same sets today, would you be interested in them objectively? Removing the emotional attachment that you have. Would I get this police station? No. Would I get the big rig truck stop? No. The only one really on that list that I might actually get might be the Black Seas Barracuda, because I think it holds up reasonably well over time, but it still lags significantly behind the detail that we see because the building techniques and the parts have changed. And we expect bigger and better sets. We want those details. We want the dual molded legs, the printed arms, the non-smiley faces, the back printing, the accessories that are interesting, and in some cases, exclusive to particular sets. Earlier this year, we reviewed the Speed Champions DeLorean, and I thought it was a fantastic set. And as I was thinking about this video, I was trying to think of what are some of the sets that I thought were really interesting, really neat, cool, that were really fun builds, that I probably wouldn't think that if I had a bigger version. And I think the perfect example is that DeLorean. I do not have the $200 DeLorean. I have the Speed Champions one, and I really like that one. The build was fun. I like the minifigs. I thought for what you get, the price, fantastic. If I had the $200 DeLorean, would I think that same thing? I doubt it. Think of the Avengers Tower that's coming out. It's $110. And when you think about the number of pieces you get, some of the minifigs, which I think it's a very good minifig selection, and if you think about the parts and the techniques that are used to get the tower, that's really impressive given that you have this $500 version that is also available that just is incredible. But I have zero interest in the Avengers Tower $110 version because I've got the big one. And that $110 version is never going to be good enough. And yeah, it saves me $110, but I think it also causes us to overlook really good sets that are affordable, that are creative, and allow us to interact with Lego in a different way and almost different scales than just getting the massive sets. And so, is this a good thing that our imaginations as kids were conquered by reality? I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a good thing either. I think if we let it be a bad thing, if we condemn small sets, if we just automatically think, well, that's terrible, or that's not creative, or that's really small, or man, that's not very detailed, or well, the $500 Adventure Tower is really that much better than the $110 version, and we're missing out on what Lego is trying to accomplish with some of these sets, which is to make them more accessible, also to give different scales and allow builders of different ages to get into some of those themes and some of those products, because you never know, right, when that next kid is going to enjoy Lego for the first time and open up their imagination, even though the veil has been lifted because they can see the $500 version of Avengers Tower or the big castles or the YouTubers who make massive displays. Yeah, they can see all that, but there's something nice and something fun about being able to get something and build it, and then imagine what it would be like to have other similar things going along with it, even if it's not fully attainable. So those are my musings today on one of the things I struggle with as it pertains to having a Lego YouTube channel, being a fan of Lego for 40 years, collecting Lego and watching my kids go through their Lego phase, and now as they're getting in their teenage years, starting to phase out of that and not being as interested in it. And I wonder what it's going to be like for the next generation or generations. But I hope that you are doing better than I, that you look at those sets that you have as kids and that you had when you were a kid, and you still would have liked them today, that you look at some of the smaller sets and you appreciate what's going on, and maybe you even get some of them to fill out some of the details in your display or your shelf or for your kids or whatever it might be. Because yeah, sometimes I struggle with that. Let me know in the comments maybe how you overcome some of that curse of being an adult fan and being judgmental about the smaller sets and ridiculing them for not having enough detail, or just dismissing them offhand because you've got the bigger, better version somewhere, or at least you've seen it and you know it exists, and you'll never be satisfied with that smaller version. Thank you so much for watching. Always remember to keep building together.